Tardes.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure for me as the communications director in RTVE, Spanish television, being the moderator of this seminar on online journalism. We're going to analyze the trends and the evolution of the digital world, as well as the traditional world. Jorge said some time ago that newspapers were done for journalists, for bankers, and so that the powerful people tremble, and finally for that the audience to just take a brief look. It's probable that you don't agree with this point of view. It is true that the journalists have spent too much time creating contents without focusing them enough to the universal receiver, all the public. It's true that we normally do it under a corporate layer with politicians, institutions, entities, etc. And this academic way to do journalism has followed a constant path for centuries until the appearance of the digital world. There are many ways to go along the digital contents. There are many definitions, but for me, the revolution, digital revolution, means the disruption of all the barriers and the academic barriers as well. Any person with more or less talent may be able to be a producer, music producer, or start any kind of company, and of course works as a journalist. The digital platforms are created for the constant exchange of information, which is not only in seconds but just in milliseconds. Previously, the watcher or the reader would only have that way to analyze the present, but now the options are unlimited. This new reality makes us think about the technical functions that a journalist should deal with. We also need to go away from what we were in 10 years ago. Many journalists have felt worried that any person having an internet connection and a laptop or even a mobile phone can become a reporter or even the director of his or her own media. There are other new trends that force us, all professionals, to make a serious reflection. First, we need to be firm in our principles of rigorousness, objectivity, etc., that have always been the flagship of our profession. And then the ability to contrast different sources, and the citizens go always to this kind of media to have a guarantee, to understand the reality with certain guarantees. We journalists cannot edit a piece of news for a radio or a TV, but we need to work under a multi-channel perspective, providing content to different channels. The pieces are not obsolete just in days but in minutes, but they will continue to be in force, because in the digital world everything stays there. We're not working for tomorrow, but we are working in the digital world under the whole for the whole time, thanks to these search engines such as Google. We need to change the way we create or we do our profession, and to provide an added value to its results. And there are questions such as, are we aware enough and provide enough guarantees to this new reality? Are we providing the journalism that people ask for? The editorial departments work so that this happens. I'm sure that all our panelists will give us very good headlines surrounding these uncertainties. They are all very important professionals in the journalism world, and above all in leading this transformation that our business, that our profession requires. Montserrat Domínguez, she's the editorial director of the Huffington Post in Spain. Then we have Gastón Roitberg from La Nación in Argentina, Ignacio Escolar, founder of Eldiario.es, and Borja Bergareche, who is Director of Editorial Innovation in Vocento. Thank you all for participating in FICOD 2014. I would all ask you for a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you, Teresa, for expressing this kind of uncertainties we face every day, but the answer is clear for a long time. The digital environment is a great opportunity so that we can create a better journalism, so that we reach more people and we deliver them something that is continued to be necessary in their lives. It's also true that apart from being an opportunity, it also has challenges, which are sometimes dramatic in terms of finance, organization. We are talking about modifying the DNA of a profession with a long tradition, and it is just a revolution or a constant evolution that we are living, that we will continue to live next year and the year after. So we assume these challenges with great enthusiasm and with good humor, and trying to be as good as possible. I will try to give an answer to this question you were posing. Why do we need a journalist in this digital world? How can we serve the societies, the public? What do we contribute? And where? And is it important? Is the size important? Is it important to have bloggers or individual journalism? Is it just the same as an agency with 100 journalists? What does that contribute in our new environment? Maybe, Montse, you can start answering this question. Did this vision, this civic perspective, change in the journalism world? Of course, absolutely. We were talking about the news that we've just received when we were out of our offices. There has been a nuclear accident in Ukraine, and we were thinking about how to focus this. As we in the Huffington Post, we have a small department. What can we contribute? Can we give something new? Well, this news is already circulating in all the networks. All the big media are giving their headlines, and so you are not going to be the first in giving this news, because in just seconds you have it everywhere in the world. But I do think there is a value in the focus, in the criteria, in the way each of us think. Even those of us who are not going to have first-hand information, because we don't have people, correspondents there, but we do receive information from agencies, and we need to identify experts, but you can have direct access with Ukrainians, with experts from that country, and people telling you exactly what is happening, and you can establish a relation with bloggers, with bloggers who are there, and you may be able to launch a piece of news outside their normal spheres. So for us, it's not only important to give the news, but to provide a context. And we were also laughing about the official version of the First Minister, the Prime Minister, because he was saying there is no security problem, everything is under control. I don't know of any nuclear accident that wouldn't start with this calming announcement. As Teresa was saying in her introduction, what has really changed is that we have a relation that we've never had with our readers, with our listeners, and with our audience. We have never had this kind of relation. There has always been an intermediary, and this makes the way we relate with them change completely. and we try to interpret the way we interpret what readers want to read, and at the same time to free, so that this is not a constant pressure that Borja was explaining from the big powers and politicians, etc. This relationship needs to be healthy, and we need to create the rules from scratch, and we're doing it right now so that we can avoid that the most clicked news will be the new golden rule that would force us to go all along the same path. We shouldn't be deaf to what the audience wishes, but we cannot forget, we cannot be only led by the tyranny of the agencies. Nacho, how is your editorial project? How, with an emphasis in this rebalancing of digital societies with citizens that are much more powerful precisely because of this? Many of the things you've already explained, the size of the editorial departments explains why our newspaper is doing what it is. There is a technological change. That is the first part. There was a huge barrier in creating a newspaper because you needed millions in investments to start a new newspaper, but now technology makes it accessible so that a group of journalists, as is our case, join and create. We have now 10,000 subscriptions, and we cannot inform about everything. We don't have a correspondent in the Ukraine to explain what's happening, but we have a team able to give news that in the past only the big ones could give. This is a flagship for journalists because they are able to explain the world from all its aspects. And it's also a product of the paper distribution. It was meaningful to have a very big company, a very big newspaper, because you needed the whole distribution in paper. But now this has changed. You need to have shifts in case there were news in sports that would appear at night, for instance. And people wouldn't read the whole newspaper, but the distribution was that way. You could not buy only one section of the newspaper. And now the digital world changed with this radically. It explains everything that is happening. You have journalists who are focusing in one topic, and they are doing it very well. And you may also use agencies that provide other kinds of pieces of news, and you need to inform, you need to be the counterpower, you need to be a mirror for the society so that it can reflect on it. And our function is also to have the society participating. And Montse was saying, we have changed from a relation where the journalists just spoke and people would just listen, and we only allowed some people to say things in the editorial part of the Cartas al Director, but you also have more, you also see there are more presence by people who are not so qualified, but they gain audience because of their way of telling things. And in this, we changed the monopoly that we had in the past. Also, political powers and big corporations use this possibility to communicate at the same way that journalists could do in the past. But at the same time, we continue to be tremendously necessary. We have not lost our function because of the way that the whole industry has changed in the journalism world. But journalists continue to be so important. As you may have a kitchen and you can cook, but you also have restaurants. If you want to have high quality information, you need people who are experts, who are specialized, and who have enough talent and enough sources, enough work to do that. It cannot be a hobby, it needs to be their profession. And I have a friend of mine, a friend of us actually, Guillermo Culey, who is the former director of elclarin.com. they said everyone could run 100 meters, but not everyone can run 100 meters in 10 seconds. That is the difference. You can catch a piece of news with your mobile phone one day, but to do it every day, you need to be a professional, and you need to work 24 hours. That maybe not 24, but 21 hours. That's right. Increasingly, it will be 24, or it is 24. You need to be innovative. He's the innovative director of La Nación, Gastón Roitberg. He lives in a great country which is incomprehensible, Argentina. Please don't ask me to explain. Yes, but talking about this specifically, I feel that we are in a very different league as in comparison to the one you are playing with public powers and para-public sectors that are so consolidated in the society. These liberal journalists and state and the citizens in the whole environment where you've been working on is quite different. How do you deal with such a hostile environment as the one in which you operate? Well, we try to apply all these techniques and platforms, providing new possibilities to what we do best, which is the research journalism. In the case of La Nación, we've been working for a lot of years trying to create groups, working groups. It was quite common 10, 15 years ago to find a research journalist who was focused in his or her country very anonymously and very well hidden with his or her sources. And today, this work in the research journalism is now totally different because you're incorporating new specialties in this team, in this working group. The big research journalists that we have could not be able to process such great information they are applying to their investigations or research if they wouldn't be helped by a systems engineer, or if they wouldn't be able to work with a data producer, or if they wouldn't have in their teams a data analyst or a data miner, and so on. They need to have these different pieces in the whole chain so that everything works perfectly, and when you see the publishing of the article, you see it has improved. It improved the work they did in the past. And it is difficult to develop this activity in a country where the public information is totally biased. There is no public information, and the little information we have is very well hidden, and it is really difficult to reach this information. However, we try to figure out with several tools and platforms which are free in the network to get this information, to process it, and even to make it available to the citizenship, and also applications they can interact with, and so they have the possibility of getting these documents, these public documents, and they are published in a way that nobody can doubt about the professionalism of us, because people may think that we are processing information and they may fear it is biased, but we do it. We work in this original document and the application of news, and I think that the most important part here is that we need to do and think that this transformation is positive. And we need to see the facts. We need to use teamwork so that all the journalism that we do is it has a higher quality every day, and not the contrary, because sometimes we see other options of media that may not be newspapers but have a very speedy dynamic, and it's good for the digital world, but I think that specifically for newspapers we should be creating higher quality, higher research articles, and the measuring stick should not be the quickness or the speed. And working in teams and working under this methodology and incorporating these new materials has provided us the way to differentiate in this ecosystem. So each of the people who works in this audience should be part of this transformation. The innovation cannot come from the outside. We were thinking that innovation should come from outside some time ago, but now we realize this needs to come from within. This should be our NDA. But Gastón, as you're saying, this transformation, we are not the main characters, or we're not the main role in this transformation. It is a technological revolution, and you need to go hand in hand with geeks and IT experts that help us to open the horizon to see where we should continue to move forward. And those of us who have been working in traditional editorial departments, we've always been blind and deaf, or at least in an isolated way, because we had several departments that were isolated among each other. In the case of Telecinco, there was a whole noise and lack of information and lack of coordination because we didn't like each other. And the IT experts wouldn't like journalists, and we wouldn't like them as well. So we thought they just wouldn't get the idea. And this has just exploded. Now you need, if you wish to move forward, you need to find the best partners and change your mindset so that you can work hand in hand with them. In one of my best bosses in Telecinco, and the IT people were there just in the back parts of the room, and they were all inside. And you were only dealing with them when something was broken. And when you have this integrated relation where you all sit together, and sports people came to the internet experts, internet journalists who were also there like aliens. And now in Eldiario.es we have the IT people working next to journalists, and this is part of our editorial department. This relation is not understood as it was in the past. We are not only working with IT people when our printer gets broken and we need to go to them in the back of the room. No, we have a new relation. We continue to have a constant cooperation, and in the newspapers we had color instead of black and white. Then we had tabloids, and the whole technological development finished with that. It reached its end. However, in the digital newspaper we have something new to do, which is not in the CRS, which is the software we work with, which is not. We're facing a work every day where technology plays an essential role, and this is happening every day. How to deal with data, and how to check the whole black card data from Caja Madrid. You will bring a database so that you can check the information and see, so that users can see, for instance, what were the restaurants where they spent the money. We've also seen cases where many digital portals have more visits from the mobile phone than from the PC. Technology is in the origin of journalism, and this past differentiation between contents and the product, now product and content is just the same in many occasions, and the editorial chief is also a product, and this implies a change in the profiles, in the attitude, and in this embracing technology and IT people, what we called IT people, who are now developers, etc. And I tell them, you should be the chief editor, because they are much more capable and they contribute a great order in our methodology that is requested in our departments, that can create applications in some days or even in a few hours. Just to close this part, yes, there was just one remark I would like to do. This is not a big change in the sense that the radio broadcasts depended on the needs, etc. But now the contents are changing because of the mobile phone consumption. 2 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, it was unthinkable that we would have 60% of people consuming from their mobile phones. And this makes us rethink how we offer information, because technology has a direct impact, as it's always had, but now the speed is really amazing. Almost all our portals, and this is something people need to know, 50-60% of the audience, of the digital audience, maybe on the weekend, at night, or first or in the morning, you are consulting information in your mobile phones. So this is you, this is the society using their mobile phones to get the information. And this is what is pace setting. We need to see this link in the origin. We're taking a look in Twitter to see what's happening in the Ukraine. Facebook is providing increasingly 10 to 20% of our audience. There are some sections or certain contents that are viral, whose origin is Facebook, which is an environment where we don't know the rules. We don't know the algorithm in Facebook. And what does that change? When I was chief in ABC, the hardest order to give was, please wait for a while, and this was just some seconds or some minutes. But the feed of news is so quick and so diverse and comes from so many different realities that it is difficult to understand how to react and what is the hierarchy in the news. There is also a very specific case. It's true that today you have more, you get the information first from the social media, and maybe whether it happened or not. So we need to be careful, because in La Nación, in our case, there are people coming to us to validate whether it's true what they've read in the social media, to know whether it was true or not.
But that validation from the reader must not challenge us. I think that is another value. Indeed, they are still referring to us and they're asking us to confirm whether that happened or not. So we need to be extra careful. If we need to delay 5, 20 or half an hour the release of information so that it's more loyal information, then let it be so. But we cannot always be right. We are not a flawless robot. And indeed, a few days ago, we had a difficult situation in Argentina because the digital media actually killed a character. And this had never happened until now. Many competitors, indeed, did have 3 or 4 dead people that they had created themselves, but this hadn't happened to us until that moment. And the most amazing part of this situation is that the situation arose because our source, the source that we used, which is a super trustworthy source, have provided this information. And we had a second source that was unrelated to the first source that had actually confirmed the information too. So the question is, who is a reliable source and who isn't? And what information are they using as a source too, so that they find that information reliable? So we need to question ourselves. We need to challenge ourselves, because that delay, that pause that you were mentioning, Borja, is what defines us at the end of the day when comparing ourselves with the competitive environment. But in direct reply to your answer, I must say that we have 3 working pathways. One is the journalist instinct, the editorial line, the editor who makes comments, and then all of a sudden they prompt comments on that, and then an article is released. This happens in the digital environment still, but the second pathway is work on search engine, which is SEO. Indeed, in the Argentinian market, I don't know what happens in Spain, but in the Argentinian market, this is quite an important source of traffic. When you post content that follows certain rules, this can be easily detected through search engines, and our staff had to get trained for this purpose, because still we have quite a big bulk of content that's created not for SEO. It doesn't abide by its rule. And then the third pathway is something that is a content that does not go through the home, so to speak. It's viral content. We don't really know what the reaction is going to be about, and I really focus on the digital proposals in this environment, and I see that there are contents that are created in order to become viral later on. The viral phenomenon doesn't happen in the beginning, in the middle of the phenomenon. It's rather created with that intent, exceeding the scope of Facebook, Twitter, and I just came up with a fourth pathway, so allow me to mention it, which is the work that we do on big data. Big data is also a production focus for contents, and it does require a minimum investment, as Borja said, or was it Nacho? Nacho said it. He said that he had put together a working team so in order to create this type of materials or applications, and you need a programmer, a journalist, and someone who's focused on interactions. Those are the four pathways or working lines that we've been working along in our environment. I think hierarchies has changed a lot with social networks, because until now hierarchies were very important parts of the director of a newspaper. They had to prepare information so that it could be released next day, so you had some time to react. As you were mentioning when you were talking about the 100 meters, and perhaps you killed someone who's not dead. And in the past, you did have enough time in order to double check the reliability of that information. But the hierarchy was about determining what was going in an odd page or in an even page, because they're more visible, and determining whether you would have 4 columns. But now this hierarchy is determined by journalists, but it's also determined by your cousin who's on Facebook clicking on I like this, or all of a sudden you receive an input, and all of a sudden something that's 10 years old, it's a trending topic for the day, even if it's part of your old files. It just gained life that day, and it became a trending topic for whatever reason. So of course journalists and newspapers do determine the agenda, but also this is now a parliamentary system. It's no longer a dictatorship, and you need to collaborate with your readers. You may want something to be the most read news in that day, but it won't be. It will be irrelevant if you place it on the cover, because covers, digital covers and print covers, are no longer so important anymore. So this forces us to set up a dialogue with readers. You cannot be crazy with them. You cannot go find them in order for you to find the trending topic, even if the trending topic of the day that they determine is cats or Christmas, and you are no longer talking to an educated audience that will never interrupt you. And by the way, since you're talking about hearing your audience, you're talking about an informational parliament in which we do introduce our decisions. How many audience analytics do we have, and what's the purpose of them? Because if now we had to tell you what we deal with in our teams, in our new desks, in our working teams, well, it has to do with a whole set of tools, analytics, audience, a series of issues that enable us to convert that mass that hears us whenever they want, and we need to convert them into users in order for us to extract profiles. And for us, this is translated into real-time audience analytics tools, because you can detect perhaps, I don't know, an old piece of news that all of a sudden is part of the daily agenda because the users retrieved it. And then we do analytics on monthly-based reporting or weekly-based reporting. Those are the type of analytics. So how much and for what purpose shall we do this? Well, talking about profiles, I said that I would never actually state this, but I'm about to confess it. We do have limited resources, and not too long ago I was telling a manager of ours that if I had all the money in the world to invest in one single profile, I would invest in one analyst, one good analyst to help me better understand what the audience actually wants, taking into account the type of media that you are, because we just cannot do anything for the audience. No trick, not all the tricks are worth it. Perhaps we can talk about Madonna's nipple or about cats, but what we want to do is a bit different. I want someone to work with me that has a good criteria, that has a good understanding about this. I need someone to help me interpret this, and I need to know what to ask those big data, what to demand from that big data. And we don't really know. And please, if there's a profile of that sort in the room, please raise your hand and approach me in private later, because we are trying to find those profiles. It's key so that we can know how to better focus our work and therefore improve it. Facebook, as you said earlier, provides a lot of information every half an hour, every minute actually, about what people want to find in our media. We would be very proud if we didn't try to interpret that message. We have an application, our application that's for free, and you can download it, and it works really well. I encourage you all to use it. And actually, through the application, we don't really have the most amount of fans. We have it through the mobile web. It's not through the application, but they are the most loyal followers. They're the ones that spend the most time on the web navigating with us, browsing with us. This is an adulterous and promiscuous world. The network is. And the network is a value. You want your piece of news not to just spread out and for everybody to read it, but you want everybody to come back from more, to the Hub, to ABC, to those newspapers, because you want those readers to become loyal. Well, this small audience niche is very useful for us so that we can better understand how they read us and at what point they stop reading us, when a article seems a bit boring to them, if a video was too long or too short, maybe they wanted more. This is what helps us determine those points. But of course, through Facebook and through statistics, we can find out the most read articles. You were talking about virals, and not too long ago we had this experience with one, and it's not frequent for us to create a viral piece of news or a video, and it was the most weird viral I've ever seen. It was actually the email sent because of the Ebola case, the media outburst that this gave rise to, because fortunately we only had one Ebola case in Spain. But there was a doctor in Sierra Leone who sent an email, and he was really amazed with the news that he was hearing about the situation of Teresa Romero, and he sent a letter, and I decided to publish it as a blog, right? But to me, it was a well-written letter, a well-written email. He had the courage to be there fighting against Ebola, and he was explaining that putting on that protection suits was not an easy task. He was working with many volunteers. He explained the protocols. I have never seen such a phenomenon as the one created because of this letter. Clicks rose and rose, and people were hungry for information, and this is something that we need to get used to. It was not just our experts, not just our journalists. It was a whole ecosystem, the whole ecosystem of sources and news issuers and information issuers. Everybody is very well skilled in order to create this information, but also information prescriptors were being part of this. We need to get used to the fact that everybody can write and read news, and this is a new approach to information, because not only shall you take into account authorized sources, and it's the way forward. We need to be very well positioned in order to create those different situations. And of course it's effortful because we need to promote our contents and we need to create those contents, and we are not necessarily opening the door to other types of stories that could be just as relevant as the one that we see every single day. And this is not random. Many viral contents, many of the examples that we see have to do with retrieving human stories, so to speak, stories that have to do with humans. And in the particular case of Facebook, it's an amazing space in order to retrieve this type of stories. After double-checking what happened with our verification process, what happened with the author, after reanalyzing how we posted this, how we told the stories, how we would tell the story behind the story, well, this is something that we had to do, and it was not random. Improving journalism has to do with retrieving those human stories and making them known to the larger public. And this is something that has been happening for centuries, and I don't see why we wouldn't do this with using the new technologies. I think the key here is that the fact of having new metrics means that we can determine whether a headline is better than another. It's not about a voting. It's not about a jury that determines if a headline was good or bad. We do A or B tests. We launch 2 headlines, and the one that gets the most attention, or even 2 pictures, yes, we do the A or B testing. And then now this is science. It used to be just theory. This is trial and error, and we do have metric data. They are measurable, they can be touched upon, and you can know whether you got it right or not. And this may have to do with a newspaper cover too, of course. I do realize now that headlines need to have a verb, and without a subject, verb, there will not be a headline. It's a complete sentence, because back in the day we used to say that the headline had to be concise, but now the headline needs to make a reference to the whole article. But also we need to take into account the reading time. It's a worthy metric, because you may attract their attention with the headline, and but if the article is not good, they may think that you fooled them. And there is a reaction which I consider to be reactionary indeed. Some people say that we need to forget about the metrics and just follow the guidelines, the great wise guidelines of journalism. But you need to take into account your information about your own work, and you need to understand that you're working for your reader. Otherwise, you will be too petulant and too proud. You cannot just make people swallow things that they don't want to taste because you say so, just because that. Meneame indeed is one of the best headline schools that there are, because they do natural selection as to the headline that was most attractive for the audience. And you know what's singular here is that new rules, and indeed there are many gurus, and the new rules don't always apply, because sometimes those cheeky headlines don't always work, and whether the lists are even or odd, that does not always work. And we need to be careful with this, because in this environment it's always trial and error. We do make mistakes, but we also get worn out, and we get tired of things that were surprising. A while ago we would be surprised about a cat, but now there's a time when you no longer want to see kittens in a basket. And we need to be alert. We need to keep our heads up, and we need to heed those new formulas and those new formats. Some things are rapidly changing, but we need to take into account the top 10 of the trending topics, but they're not permanent. They will fade away. We may talk about Facebook, because up to what extent is it an ally or a threat to our hierarchy? Perhaps in 1 or 2 years' time we won't be talking about Facebook in forums like this. We'll be talking about a new company, a new platform. It's quite funny that we always compare the news hierarchy using Twitter and Facebook as references. When you have hot news and you do this type of comparisons, you will realize that the reality map is completely different. And Facebook is not really transparent as for their algorithm. We don't really know how our contents are delivered. They say that they do help us send you the contents that we make, and they say that they give you the contents that you most want to read, but we don't really know how to do it. This is a permanent challenge. And what we do is to respond to changing audiences too, because the use of new formats evolves together with us. Sometimes we are at the park with our children, sometimes we are at work, things change, and we need to adapt to that. And if at the same time we have feasible businesses in place that enable us to fulfill the other function, which is to create employment and to create social work in social wealth. In our case, we pay 3,000 payrolls, and I take pride in that, and I like saying it. Because sometimes in the digital discussion, we focus on this a lot, but Nacho is a journalist, and he's an entrepreneur, he's a businessman, and he has put together a business, and he also works for companies that pay many payrolls, and they also generate social wealth along those lines. I am sure that the audience possibly has questions. We wanted to tackle other topics too, but if the audience wants to make any comment, and this matches well our conversation, please go ahead. And just wait for a second until they give you a microphone, because some people are following the conference through streaming. Hello, good morning. I would like to know how you are preparing from the journalist point of view. How are you preparing in the media to face the growing demand of audiovisual content, especially video? This comment is based on my intuition than anything else, but I have the feeling that readers are increasingly lazy. They want immediate content, and perhaps what they want is to know news quickly and without any effort, and I think this has to do with video formats too. How do you approach this new scenario? In La Nación, we had ups and downs with video work. Initially, we thought that we just had to put together videos, as you would with a news release, a traditional news release. And we actually crashed against the wall because we thought that our videos were good, but they were not being viewed. And if you compared the news release and the video visualizations, you realized that the differences were huge. We thought that we had to replicate the model that they had in TV, and we spent a whole lot of money in camera operators, video studios and whatnot. All this was a great failure, but it helped us get to a point in which we are working on a specific video project. And we have two parallel sides to it. On the one hand, we are trying to get the newsroom to work proactively with video. And when I say proactively, I mean that when they try to portray information, video is involved. And of course, this is something that competitors are doing. The video documents are not owned by us, but this has an impact on the whole media ecosystem. The transformation of the newsroom for them to produce video is one of the most intense things that we've lived through in past times, because this is not just something that photographers have to do. Immediately you think, okay, in the newsroom, who's visual? Well, the photographer. Let's get the photographer to record a video. And it's not about that necessarily. We need to think about the news reporter, the news reporter that needs to cover a story. And as of today, they have a series of tools in order to gather documentary material in order to produce that piece of news. On the other hand, we are working along a different way of working, which is how to produce professional videos that are visualized and that actually work together with the most successful video platform that we have currently, which is YouTube. And that's something that we cannot deny. We need to see how to get advantage from that as a media. Allow me to set an example. We decided to create a newsroom in order to do shows inside. And not too long ago, we invited Café Tacuba. They're a Mexican band. Possibly you're acquainted with them, with Café Tacuba. And what we did was to create a show in the newsroom. And the materials that we created were worked on, and they became exclusive material for La Nación, and you could only watch it in La Nación. So what we did was to open the newsroom, and as you know, normally there's no transit through the newsroom. Nobody goes through the newsroom. Well, perhaps we visit our competitors' newsroom because we're interested in that, but people don't go into a newsroom. And what's interesting about our newsroom? It's just a work station, and it's just like anybody else, right? So people don't try to visit newsrooms. But what we tried to do was to open the newsroom and to work on this shows with post-production and so on, so that we could make this available for all readers, online readers, print readers, and readers that we may have in any platform. So right now, we are in the center of the hurricane with this specific project to see how we can harness our past mistakes to build up a better video strategy that will foster the reader's loyalty and would create business too, because monetization is also important. The sales area is very interesting in having us develop this project because they understand that this is going to establish a parallel channel for advertisers that would run in parallel with what we have today. And I would create a search engine, not just for videos or for music exclusively, but rather for everything. Allow me to make a comment. We have just created a very small unit because indeed video and image production is expensive, but fortunately, we are noticing that new tools enable us to elaborate and re-elaborate information on a video format, on infographic format within the newsroom. But journalists need to be trained about this so that they can know when to use a different format, because it's not a matter of laziness, as someone from the audience was saying. Younger people have a more visual culture, and we must acknowledge and realize that written culture is losing leeway vis-a-vis video formats, and we need to make an effort so that information and journalistic contents can also be accessed on a video format. It's not really a matter of being lazy. It's not that they want everything ready to be consumed. Is that the people who consume this information, and sometimes it's the youngest audience, but there is a transition, and young people want to access this information and they prefer the video format. We just hired someone for our newsroom, and we have an apprentice who is actually doing very good video work, and together with this person that's working with us on video, we want to create a small unit, and we want all the different journalists to think about this, to get involved, so that they can see what contents can be translated into video formats without incurring into a too high of a cost. The cost that would be related to a traditional TV studio or TV newsroom. I think we need to perceive the internet in a different manner. What are the most successful contents? Webcam cameras used by young people, and this camera operators are also the presenters, and they have 10 million viewers on YouTube. In the newsroom, you may want to create a mobile operation center. Well, that is not television for the internet. That's not multimedia for the internet. You can't have all that structure. So I think we need to challenge that structure, that culture that was on paper. In journalism, you rarely ever see cases like that of Montse or mine. We've also been part of TV companies. Sometimes radio and TV mixed a little bit, but print media were separate from all of them. And this is something that the internet has challenged, because even if you come from a different culture, you need to touch upon the different types of media. Audio is not so frequent, perhaps, but we just created a radio program, Carne Cruda, together with Eldiario.es, and it's .es. It's on the internet. And I think that new generations do prefer video, but it's because, I think written word has a longer lifespan. And since WhatsApp exists, since email exists, the written word has gained importance and it has its adequate place. In the beginning of digital journalism, when I started going into this, I realized that a good headline is the best journalistic artifact. And a headline even for a video, right? Yes, and the image is key. Just last week, we organized a focus group so that we could determine what the mobile consumption of our users is like. And you know how a focus group works. You have a set of people, a set of users who are in a room, and it's like a question in a police station. You're looking at them behind a mirror, and after a few hours you extract a very clear conclusion. You talked, for instance, about lazy audiences. Well, in the attention economy that we live in, attention is key. And in this focus group, the conclusion was that they liked big pictures. You know, pictures have a lot of adherence. They create a lot of attraction, but still we need to identify our audiovisual identity. I'm talking about newspapers that are present on the internet. What type of contents do we have that? We need to talk about innovation. Innovation gives rise to wonders of audiovisual arts. Have you seen a documentary that Le Monde did about Mussolini? It's spectacular. It's an experimental project that they did with people that know how to do with this. Interactive videos, 360 videos. There are many audiovisual ways of telling things, and for the time being, they are expensive. We need to determine the adequate format still. And I think that this year and in the next 2 years, you will see us testing different options and different things, and we hope to be able to issue contents that will catch your eyes. Allow me to tell you something. My daughter just the other day was showing me a video that she put together. She edited it with her mobile. It was packed with hearts and clash, plash, all this type of messages. And she had put together images of her friends and of herself. That was amazing. All of a sudden, we painfully learned how to edit, and she can do it in only 3 minutes. And of course, it's not an informational video, but what I mean to say is that it's an information tool. We can see pictures of what happened in Ukraine, or what happened in front of the Vicente Calderón Stadium just the other day. And these are tools that you can download from the net, in the internet, and they're for free. And we need to keep track of this evolution, because we are going to see an increasing amount of informational bundles that also come from citizens and of course from journalists. There's a whole field of exploration that is beyond pure journalist tools. In New York Times, for instance, they are doing crazy things and they're beautiful. But there's a different scale that we shouldn't despise. For instance, using Vine. Yes, using Vine, which is something that we see more and more often. When you can see the information flow through web chat, that is amazing. When they covered the referendum in Scotland, this is something that they use very frequently. They determine the type of audiovisual content that they could circulate through WhatsApp. And this is the last comment before we finish. This is something that has always happened. In newsrooms, we continuously try to adopt civil technology that has been, for instance, developed by society. For instance, blogs. We think that we are spearheading the breakthroughs in innovations, and in reality, we are the last ones to find out about these innovative things. Society is ahead of us, and what we try to do is to adapt those inventions created by young people like your daughter, and we try to adapt those inventions to our way of working and journalism. Well, we started 5 minutes behind, and we are going to finish with only a 5-minute delay. To please our organizers. Thank you very much, Nacho, Monse, and everybody, all the different panelists and everybody here. We really hope that you enjoyed the discussion, and it was a pleasure for us to be part of it. Thank you.